Next one. Is it possible for the rapture to occur before the third temple is completed?
Yes. When you're talking about the rapture of the church, the rapture of the church takes place. You got this whole timeline out of the Old Testament, and it's in the book of Daniel. And so it has to do with the history, the prophetic history of the nation of Israel from the time of Daniel, actually a little bit later than Daniel, up until the time that Messiah comes. Okay, and so it's called the 70-week prophecy. And let me get back there real quick. So if you got your Bible, it's in the book of Daniel, and it's in Daniel chapter 9. And so I'm going to try to shorten this up, but basically 70-week prophecy begins at the command to restore and rebuild the city of Jerusalem along with the walls. And we know that this took place in the 20th year of Artaxerxes. We also know that 20th year, well, I'm not going to get into the details of it, but there's good reason to believe that it's 445 BC.
And that's Temple 2, number 2.
That's Temple number 2. And it says from that decree that there are 77s, literally, 77s that are decreed for the people of Israel. And the number 7 is the word for week in the Bible, okay, in the Hebrew there. And so so it's translated in my version, 70 weeks are determined, right? And so it's 77s of something. So 77s of days, that would be a normal week. The Jews also had 77 or sevens of years, which is the context in this passage. Daniel has been looking at a prophecy about the 70-year deportation of the people of Israel, and that was a number. It was a number of sevens. It was because they had not kept the 7th year Sabbath. They had Sabbaths of days. They had Sabbaths of years. And I'm trying to make the short version. But anyway, when you go through and you take 77s of years and you look at how the Bible uses years specifically in prophetic passages. Years in prophetic passages are 360-day years. And so you go 449 years, and you multiply that by 360, you get 180,000, you get a bunch of days. When you're looking, it's 173,880 days, basically. And so when you go through and you do all the numbers on this, as it goes through, it says that in verse 26, after 62 sevens or 62 weeks, Messiah, in verse 25, it says, "Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and rebuild and build Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks." And that's actually where you get the 173,880 days. That's 69 years total. It says the street shall be built again and the wall even in troublesome times. And then it says after the 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off. And so the way this prophecy is divvied up is you got 69 weeks divided into 7 weeks of years and then 62 weeks of years. That's the total of 69. 173,880 days. And that goes to the coming of the Messiah. And then it says after that period of time, and that comes out to about 32 AD. After that period of time, Messiah, 3 things are going to happen. Messiah is going to be cut off. The people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. And then there's going to be the desolations of Israel. Okay, those 3 things are going to take place after that 69 period of sevens, or 173,880 days. Okay. The problem with that whole thing is that leaves 1 week after that, and that 1 week of years does not have enough time to fulfill those three things. So that 7-year period cannot include the death of Jesus, the destruction of Jerusalem, and the desolation of the nation of Israel. It can't include the death of Jesus and the destruction of Jerusalem, because those are basically 38 years apart. And so you only have 7 left over. Then you get to verse 27, and it says, then he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. And there you have the last 7 years. And so what that lets you know is that verse 26 has a parenthesis in it. There's 69 weeks of years that come from the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem till the coming of Messiah the Prince. And then after that 69 weeks of years, there are 3 events that take place. The death of Jesus, the destruction of the temple, which took place 38 years later, and then the desolation of the nation, which it was going on for 1,900 years after that point. And so you have at least a 1,900-year pause in between the 69th week and the 70th week, and the 70th week is what we call the tribulation period. And that is spoken about in verse 27. So this is where you get the idea that God has put the nation of Israel on pause for a period of time to reach out to the Gentile world, and that God is going to restart basically Israeli history as far as his dealing with the nation of Israel for the last 7 years, which we call the tribulation period. It says in verse 27, all this to get to your question, then he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering. And you got to figure out who the he is. And what you do is you go to what's the nearest antecedent. And there are 2 of them in verse 26. And it says, after the 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself. That's one guy that the he can be talking about in verse 27. And then it says, and the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. That's the other guy that this he can be talking about. And you have to go to the nearest one. And so the he that's being spoken about in verse 27 is the prince of the people who are going to destroy the city and the sanctuary. Well, the people who destroyed the city and the sanctuary were the Romans. And so this is a Roman prince. This is where you get the idea that the Antichrist is going to come out of the revived Roman Empire, along with some other passages. And so somebody from the revived Roman Empire is going to make a covenant literally with the many, talking about the people of Israel, for 1 week. But in the middle of the week, he brings an end to sacrifice and offering, and on the wing of abomination shall be one who makes desolate. That's the abomination of desolation, even until the consummation, which is determined, is poured out on the desolate. And so in the middle of that last 7-year period, you have the defiling of the Jewish temple. And so what this looks like is that this covenant has something to do with the rebuilding of the Jewish temple. And so I would place the rebuilding of the Jewish temple within the 7-year tribulation period, and it looks like the Antichrist is instrumental in the rebuilding of the temple because he makes a covenant with the Jewish people. Looks like that covenant has to do with this, and he defiles that covenant in the middle of the 7-year period that he promised for that covenant, and he brings an end to sacrifice and offering. And so that when you go through the rest of the verses, the Bible's clear that the church is not here when the Antichrist arises. And so the Antichrist would have to arise after that. And then when he does arise, looks like he makes a covenant with the people of Israel. And that includes temple worship. And then he defiles that temple and breaks that covenant midway through the last 7-year period. So that puts the rapture of the church before the tribulation period, before the coming of the Antichrist, and also before the building of the temple. There you go. Clear as mud.
Okay, so on that, in verse 27, when it says it puts an end to sacrifice and offering, that means the temple has to be there.
Exactly.
So at that point, the temple is there.
Exactly.
The question is, how long has it been there? And the covenant, going from Book of Revelation and other passages, is probably a peace deal that World War III kicked off.
Uh-huh.
And that's the start of the first half of the tribulation.
Exactly.
Is that peace deal.
Yeah.
And so the temple may be there, but it doesn't have to be there. And that point is when the Antichrist could be the project leader on that.
Exactly. One of the things that the Jews believe, and it comes out of the minor prophets, is that Messiah is going to build their temple. And so most prophecy, most guys who are into biblical prophecy believe that that's one of the reasons that the Antichrist is involved with this. It's a great way to deceive the Jewish people.
Right.
You know, and so he comes along and he's instrumental in rebuilding the temple. They go, this is the Messiah, and they begin to go after him. Jesus said that you don't receive me, but when another comes, you'll receive him. You know, that's in John chapter 5 at the end of the chapter. In any case, it looks like that's how the Antichrist deceives the people of Israel, by the rebuilding of the temple.
And so with the doctrine of imminency, Christ can come back at any moment. Mm-hmm. We have to be ready for him. It says that don't be surprised. People are going to get caught off guard. One sleeping, one working, but one lying in the same bed is going to be taken. And so it's a surprise event.
Exactly.
So he could come right now without anything being fulfilled.
Exactly.
But when we're in 2023, and we just talked about you doing a prophecy update on the 17th, and they already have stuff set aside in Israel. In fact, there's a website dedicated to the rebuilding of the temple. Mm-hmm. The Jewish nation is there, 1948, which is another biblical prophecy fulfilled, because you have to have Israel if you're going to have
exactly
the temple. If
the city of Jerusalem is in their control and the Temple Mount is in their control.
Right.
That has to happen too.
Right. And that's interesting for what's going on right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
With Hamas and different things. But all that to say that if we see all that stuff, and there's a whole list of those. In fact, I've been through many years of prophecy updates, and the first ones were really cool because you go through the mark of the beast and one world government. You could see all that stuff. And now I'm to the point where it's like, it's so detailed. And Israel being on the front of the news right now, it's like, how close are we going to get to the event when it's so precise?
Yeah, I don't know,
you know?
Man. It's like, this could have happened so long ago. And, one of the things that is a starter for the book of Revelation is that these things are going to take place quickly. They're going to take place soon, but it literally means quickly, like dominoes falling into place. And so when you're talking about the events that precede the coming of Jesus, there's no precursor for the rapture. The precursors are all about the second coming.
Right.
And so God could have orchestrated events so that those things could happen at any time. And it's really interesting that we're living in times where we look at the book of Revelation and we're seeing the absolute probability of literal fulfillment of all the things that we see in the book of Revelation. It's not even possibility, it's probability of these things being fulfilled. And it's like God's pushing it right up to the limit on this whole thing. And I think that's how God is. Lot didn't get out of Sodom. When he left Sodom and Gomorrah, the fire and brimstone was coming down. And when Noah got into the ark, it was immediate that the flood came on the earth. And before God's going to judge the world, he waits till the last possible second. And I don't know how much closer we can get to this and still have the last possible second. It's like, you're right. It's amazing. It's like every year I'm just like, this is crazy.